Horizon Zero Dawn is a great franchise of open-world action games. And save for the PlayStation VR 2 title, all of the mainline games of the series can be played on handhelds thanks to the likes of the Steam Deck, ROG Ally, Legion Go, and more. What I did not expect to see from this series was not only a LEGO-themed game, but also a Horizon game released for the Nintendo Switch. But here we are, with a game that's very different in all aspects. Let's dive right in. Here is my review of LEGO Horizon Adventures for the Nintendo Switch. This story is about Aloy, a young archer that lives in a post-apocalyptic world filled with animal-like machines. When she travels to the community of Mother's Heart in hopes of finding out who her true mother is, the village is attacked by a cult, with most of them kidnapped and taken away. With bow in hand, Aloy travels to rescue the prisoners and becomes involved in a world-ending crisis. As a story, this is somewhat of a reimagining of Horizon Zero Dawn. Many of the same characters are involved, all of the enemies are returning machines and bosses from that first game, along with Aloy's search for answers, and the ultimate villain plot is loosely similar to what happened in that first game, albeit far more basic in nature. It's also much more uplifting and comedic. Instead of the ultra serious vibe to Aloy, she's a happy-go-lucky girl that loves pickle sandwiches and most importantly, is not hated by her fellow tribespeople for being an outsider. Every cutscene is filled with little real-world jokes about things like donuts and cosplaying in LEGO fashion, making it very funny to watch and listen to. While I'm not sure I would want to begin the franchise with this game, it's a cute little reimagining of Horizon. When it comes to gameplay, this is an action game with combat and building elements thrown in. As you play, you'll platform around linear levels, collecting LEGO studs and fighting off enemies and bosses. The Switch version of this game is pretty much feature for feature with the PlayStation version, so you don't need to worry about this being chopped down on the Switch. Outside of the more advanced graphical features on PlayStation 5, it's the same game. So much so that we have something here that's not on any of the other Switch LEGO games. Co-op multiplayer for both local couch play as well as online co-op with someone from your Switch friend list. The interesting thing about this game is that it doesn't play like Horizon, but it also doesn't play like a LEGO game. This game was not developed by Traveler's Tales and has elements of both of their games in Horizon, but a lot of things that are very different. Main progression works out of a hub that you return to between story missions. The actual story levels are divided into areas, and each of those levels is pretty small in scale. You follow a mostly set path, platforming across gaps and handholds, moving towards battle areas and eventually the end of the level. It's very linear in nature, there are very few alternate routes off of the main path, and when there are, they're usually to either lead you to a chest for free studs in a singular room, or a level having two paths that lead to the same combat arena. There is some Horizon flair here though, having you shoot arrows through elements to clear obstacles, ride on zip lines, and doing a bunch of climbing across ledges. There's a little bit of LEGO here as well, with some destructible objects here and there and occasional puzzles with electrifying doors inside cauldrons, but it's relatively minimal. There's none of that big let's build things out of LEGO bricks in the middle of a level outside of small little cosmetic things that are few and far between. When you start fighting enemies, it also doesn't feel like the normal beat-em-up LEGO gameplay. You can hide in tall grass until you start attacking, and Aloy does not have a melee weapon. Instead of alternating between her bow and spear, she can only attack with the bow, aiming normal and charged arrows towards enemies. To help with this restriction, the game has 3 playable characters outside of Aloy that will join as you progress the story, each with their own unique weapons. You also get several limited use super weapons and gadgets like the Tripcaster, gravity bombs, and various types of arrows from elemental shock to rapid fire. Despite being mostly isometric in camera angle, the body part system from Horizon is here. You can tap L to use your focus and identify weak points on enemies, moving around and firing arrows at them for higher damage. The parts will eventually break off, having you move on to others, just like in the mainline titles. This is used a lot as you get to more chaotic battles later on in the game when you're fighting cultists and multiple machines at the same time, needing somewhat precise aim to always hit weak points and do decent amounts of damage. Though you also have other things you can use like elemental barrows to throw, hazards, and large pools of corruption that can damage enemies when destroyed. Combining these with the gadgets and super weapons, the combat system has a decent amount of depth to it, especially for a LEGO game. It's not crazy, but much simpler than walk up to enemy and mash button to punch until they die. It's also a bit more difficult with how the respawn mechanic works. In most LEGO games, you endlessly respawn when you're defeated. In this game, you respawn if you fall off a ledge, but if you die from losing all your hearts from enemy attacks, you actually restart at a previous checkpoint. You have to be on the lookout for berry trees to refill health when you get low, since battles are all or nothing. Now technically, if you're really having issues, you can go into the setting menu and lower the difficulty or turn on invincibility, but you don't really need to. There are RPG elements here as well, leveling up after getting so much experience and gaining buffs like higher max health, increased bow or weak point damage, and the like. Now once you get through the battles, you collect a gold brick and complete the level, going back to the hub and moving on to the next. Earned studs can also be used in the hub for a variety of things. You build new home and facilities with it, but can also purchase costumes for Aloy to use from the Horizon, Lego City, and Ninjago franchises, as well as upgrading your character with a lot of passive buffs that you are going to need when you get later on in the game. As you'll quickly see, this is a very simple and basic game. You have no open world or sandbox to explore, it is just small localized levels that are focused on puzzle solving and combat, going right back into the hub to do it again. What is here is designed very well, but like I said before, this is not what you would expect out of a Horizon or a Lego game. And as all this comes together, some things are a bit strange here. As you continue the story, you will unlock special little Apex hunt missions where you revisit story areas and fight off beefed up versions of enemies, and you'll eventually get a free roam version of this where you can repeat those areas indefinitely to get more studs and levels. But oddly enough, you cannot replay story missions. Once they're completed, they're gone forever unless you start a brand new game. I feel like that kind of hurts the replay value a little bit, even though you can technically repeat the little free roam missions, just not anything involving the story. And that brings us to content and length. It'll take you about 10 hours to complete this game's 5 chapters, and you have the little Apex and free roam stuff to continue leveling after that, along with building more facilities in the hub and finishing any passive missions you didn't complete for the actual hub area. Next up is presentation, which is fantastic. This game has a lot of detail built into it. While you don't get all the crazy lumen lighting stuff you get on PS5, everything looks very crisp and very well done, all the way down to correct shadows on everything from tables in the hub to Aloy herself. Performance is also very good. The game stays at a smooth 30 FPS for almost the entire game. Every so often you'll see a split-second hiccup, mostly in the hub area next to where you first spawn, but it plays extremely well in both docked and handheld. That brings us to battery life, which you don't get that much of. This game uses up a lot of power. LEGO Horizon gives the original and light models a battery range of 2 to 2.5 hours, while the V2 and OLED models get 4.5 to 5.5 hours. In conclusion, LEGO Horizon Adventures brings a bite-sized action game that offers a lighthearted reimagining of Zero Dawn to the handheld world. Now on the downside, you aren't able to replay story missions, limiting the game's replayability, and it uses a ton of power when it comes to battery life. But if you don't mind not replaying missions and are okay with it not being open world, it's a good little Horizon LEGO game that plays great on the Switch. Reviews to Go rates LEGO Horizon Adventures for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.